What is up, guys, and welcome back to the Sweat It Out podcast. Today we have an amazing individual. She is truly an inspiring person. She is a master coach, keynote speaker. She is a best-selling author, and she is also a podcast host. Please help me welcome Christine Hasler. How's it going?
Good. I'm happy to be here with you guys.
Yeah, sorry, we've been looking forward to this for quite a while now. So,
oh yeah,
thank you for being on.
And I gotta say, first off, I saw your post yesterday. So congrats on your anniversary.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it was really, we may even talk about it, but yeah, my marriage is, I think, one of my biggest, I don't know if accomplishment is the right word, but something I'm very, very, very proud of because of, who he is and what our vision is together and how long I waited.
Yeah, marriage isn't easy, is it?
No, relationships in general aren't easy. Relationships more than anything else trigger all our childhood issues. So they're tough in so many ways, but they can get easier when you heal a lot of those issues and have more tools. Then relationships, I talk about how relationships are either come from your past and you just play out your past in your relationship, or relationships take you towards your future. You're either working with someone to work out your issues or you're working with someone to walk towards a shared vision together. And for the most part, the beginning of our life and the beginning of our relationships are more the issue-based relationships than they are the side-by-side partner walking toward a vision. And, that's what relationships are for in so many ways, is to learn and grow. And so I don't see any of my past relationships, my broken engagement, my divorce, none of those things as a failure. I maybe did it at the time, but I don't now, because I don't think we should evaluate the success of a relationship on its longevity. I think that's a very old model. It's one of the many paradigms we're breaking down. I think if we look at what's going on in the world, government, education, health, democracy, but like everything is being broken down. And I think marriage and family should be one of the things that we look at, because I think we're in some very antiquated ways of being married and what that means, and even like how we parent, how we have a family, all those things.
I think it's amazing, that you brought that up, because, even thinking about it, sometimes people will just stick around in a marriage just because that's what they're supposed to do. That's right. What the parents said. And, that's where, if they're religious, their pastor or their priest or whatever said, no, you can't break this bond. And you see sometimes where, there's a lot of other bad things that come out of that when you stay in an unhealthy marriage that, might not work, and if anything, there is nothing wrong with understanding, like, if there's a healthy, way to break this off in a way that it's not going to be, a bad way of going about it, and an understanding. I think that's the beautiful part of understanding, okay, this marriage had its moments, this marriage had its place, but now, understanding, okay, we both understand, okay, this might not continue, and we're okay with that. I think it's so true that a lot of people put this notion where it's like, oh no, but you can't break that. You can't, and that's why you're seeing a lot of changes. A lot of people sometimes not even getting married.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people are afraid of what it means. They're afraid of the institutionalism of marriage. And I think so many people, especially now, are really concerned about their personal freedom. And, what my husband and I talk about in our relationship, because he was very commitment phobic, unfaithful in his relationships, like just wanted to be free. And what we're both learning is we feel more free in our marriage than we ever have, because freedom isn't doing whatever the heck you want any time of day. That's juvenile freedom. That's kind of immature freedom. That's freedom that's coming from feeling constricted by your unresolved things. True freedom is full self-expression, like really being able to be who you are and feel uninhibited in that, and having a relationship that holds that. And this could be in your career too. We can have freedom in our career. You can have a lot of responsibility, but feel really free because you just feel totally expressed. So I think back to what you said about relationships not having to stick together just for the sake of having to stick together, that's when people start to feel not free and trapped, is when they're staying in something long past its expiration date. You've learned what you've needed to learn. It's time to move on. And, I wanted to mention too, one of the major reasons people stay together is for the kids.
True.
And I have been a coach since 2004, and I blend coaching and psychology because I have a master's degree in psychology as well. And that's really a lot of my background is more the therapy psychology, because I can't coach people on their future until I help them clean up their past. It just doesn't work. But we'll start in 2004. So 16 years of doing this, I cannot say that I've seen a trend that people who had parents who were married are better off than people who don't. Because most of the people I've seen whose parents are married didn't have that great of a marriage. Now, people who grew up in very happy, healthy parents who still were very in love with each other, yes, definitely see that. But I don't see a difference between people who grew up with parents that were fighting all the time, staying together just for the kids, versus people whose parents divorced and they went on to be happy. In fact, I often see that the kids whose parents divorced and went on to be happy were better off than those that stayed together just for the sake of staying together.
Yeah, I've definitely seen that in my own childhood, like with my friends growing up, the ones that had parents that were, it was very evident to everyone in the community, even that they were very unhappy, and that made the kids unhappy. And it really, like you said, it didn't really make a whole lot of difference between them and the families that ended up getting divorced. Cause then you have like a realistic expectation of where you can move forward from, right? Like, okay, we don't have to pretend anymore. Now we can just co-parent and we can figure this thing out, try to be happy in our own sense. And I want to go back to kind of a point while we're sticking on the childhood thing where you mentioned marriage is kind of like a reflection of the things that you've done in your childhood or the ability to move forward into the future. And that's something that I'm also, recently divorced. So I understand that fully, where during my childhood, I was always like the fixer in our family, right? With my mother and my sister, always trying to solve the problems, always trying to make sure that, they didn't have the same or they didn't go down any further issues than I could see coming at my early age. And I found myself doing the same thing with my marriage. Like I sought after a woman that, in my mind had a lot of potential, but also, had a lot of growing up to do. And I thought, okay, I could probably fix that. I could help her resolve these issues. As you know, that doesn't usually work a lot of the time.
No.
Why do you think that there is such a reflection in our relationships on our childhood past?
Yeah. Well, and this is going to sound like a spiritual answer, but this is just a human answer. So we can call it the soul, we can call it our inner self, our higher self, whatever. There's a part of our consciousness that's always seeking to evolve and grow. And we do that by healing the unresolved wounding from our childhood. So as children, we have certain needs that need to be met for developmental markers. There's certain things we need in the womb. There's certain things we need birth to 1 month. There's certain things we need, there's different markers in the stages of development. And childhood needs are things like needing to feel safe, needing to feel nourished, needing to feel like someone is there kind of watching your boundaries, like giving you some freedom, but also telling you when to pull back, the need to feel expressed, the need to feel autonomous. We have these needs as human beings to fully develop and to fully evolve and to fully reach higher states of consciousness. And because our parents are human and they had difficult childhoods as well, they often aren't well equipped to give us everything we need. And people get stunted at different stages in development. So I'm just making this up, but let's just say your mom had something that happened to her at age 12, where she kind of got stuck at that age. She had some kind of trauma. And even though, she was 35 raising you, there was still a 12-year-old at times running the show. So we slipped into this energy where she let you kind of move into a more surrogate spouse role. Mm-hmm. And you didn't really have that need met of your needs being taken care of, right? So there's going to be a part of you that continues to seek it because it's like a piece of the puzzle missing from your consciousness. So you're always going to be seeking out this piece that you didn't get in childhood. And so anyone that looks familiar to the person who was supposed to get it to you, I don't mean looks physically, but feels familiar in terms of you're going to be and this is the other thing that's really kind of effed up about it, is we're often very sexually attracted and there's great chemistry with people who remind us of our parents. I mean, that sounds kind of messed up.
Freudian.
Yeah, it gets very Freudian. But it's not conscious, right? It's totally not conscious at all. It's that inner child wanting so badly to get what he or she didn't get from that parent, that we will go out and date and pursue and marry and have children with someone thinking, oh, but this is going to solve this wound. Because even though with your ex, sorry to keep using you as an example,
no, it's good. Please.
It's so much easier to talk about these.
Josh, have I filled any of these roles?
Yeah, not in the way I need them.
We'll get to you two later. But because, that was that wound, you'll look for someone who you need to fix, but at the same time, what you're unconsciously wanting is for her to take care of you. Right. And eventually what probably led to the divorce was being exhausted because your needs were never met in this situation. And what we learn is that anything that our parents didn't give us, we can't go get from someone else. That's the evolutionary role of an inside job, right? That whatever we didn't get from our parents, we have to give to ourselves, an inner parent. And when we start meeting those needs and giving ourselves all the little pieces of the puzzle, those developmental markers that we didn't get as children, then we start to attract a different kind of person. And that's not to say that, like in my marriage, inner child stuff and past wounding sometimes comes up, but I can see it, I can tend to my needs, and then I can communicate clearly, without blame, without manipulation, without passive aggressiveness, to my husband what's going on and what I need, rather than expecting him to be a mind reader or unconsciously thinking that it's up to him to meet all my needs versus me meeting them myself.
Yeah, and having those conversations can be scary, right? Like making yourself more vulnerable, even when it is with your significant other, right? And opening up some of these, past, traumas and past stories that, make you feel uncomfortable can in itself be uncomfortable. How do you help people get over those hurdles to be able to have these difficult conversations? Because, across the board in society now, I feel like people are avoiding difficult conversations.
It's very true.
Yeah.
How do you help people overcome that barrier so that they can be able to, freely express themselves and get their true message across?
And I wanted also add on maybe to Josh's thing based off what he mentioned or what he asked. Helping people get over those hurdles, would you also say that even if you're in a relationship where we just talked about where it can mean other things based on our past experiences, can those relationships be fixed through these communications? Can it end up working, or would it most likely be, we might have to look another route based off what Josh has asked?
It totally depends. So I'll try to answer both questions kind of darting around. So I talk about the 5 different kinds of relationships that I made up through just all my own relationships and just seeing so many people over the years. And there's issue-based, compatibility, fantasy, journey mates, and side-by-side partnerships. And all have different dynamics, and we don't need to go into all of them right now. But the ones we're really talking about are issue-based versus side-by-side partnership. And in an issue-based relationship where you have like my unresolved needs and someone else's unresolved needs, it's very hard to work on the relationship. And that's what most people tend to try to do. They try to work on the relationship, work on this dynamic with each other. But that often doesn't work, because what really needs to happen in those relationships is both people need to go independently work on their own stuff, because they can't work on the dynamic of the relationship because all their own stuff is coming up too much. Just keep ping-ponging off each other. So it can work if both people maybe even take a break and go work on their own individual issues and that takes some time, and then kind of try to come back together. And so communication in a relationship is really hard when we're time traveling. And what I mean by that is, a lot of times when we're triggered in relationship, I may be here in present day 2020 talking to you, but really it's my 14-year-old that's having the conversation and having the emotions, because whatever is triggered in the relationship dynamic is reminding me of something that happened at 14. Again, this is all super unconscious. So that's why communication gets so messy. and why like you're saying something and you don't think the person totally doesn't hear you, and then they're saying something back to you that doesn't make sense. It makes you even madder, and it just can be a mess because you got two triggered people trying to have a conversation. So my first tip is, whenever you're trying to communicate something difficult or meaningful or important or something that triggered you in the relationship, first have a deep conversation with yourself. Really go in and be like, okay, what is bothering me? A great question to ask, one of the greatest questions to ask when you're triggered, is what does this remind me of? Especially, what does this remind me of from my childhood? Not necessarily the exact argument, but the feeling. If you're feeling restricted, if you're feeling misunderstood, if you're feeling teased, like whatever it is, if you're feeling abandoned, rejected, really think about, okay, when have I felt like that in the past, and see if you can work with that. And then when it does come time to communicate to your partner, there's some very simple communication tips that work pretty much for everybody. Again, if you're not coming into the conversation completely heated and triggered, but if you've actually done some of your own work, maybe yelled in your car, hit a few pillows, did some journaling, cried a few tears, or maybe a lot of tears, and then comes, so you're a little more clean and you're a little more in present day, then you can use tools like perception checking, saying something and then saying, can you repeat back what you heard me say? I want to make sure that I'm communicating clearly, and vice versa with your partner. When they say something to you or your colleague or whoever, say, okay, this is what I let me just make sure I heard what you're saying, and repeat it back. So, message sent is message received. Also, using I language is so important in communicating. When we get in arguments or when we're communicating, we tend to be like, you did this, and you made me feel this way, and you. And all that does is send the other person into defensiveness. So it's very important to be like, when this happened, not even when you did this, but when this happened, I felt blah, blah, blah. You can say things like, when you said I felt blah, 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 but really that I language is so important to that. And then really being able to communicate your needs and what it provides you with. So I need you to XYZ, because what that does for me is XYZ. And those three simple things, for perception checking, using I language, and I need you to, like, clearly communicating, and also what it provides you with. Because a lot of times when I say to my husband, I really need you to close the laundry room door. He goes in the laundry room every day, multiple times, to like put his dirty clothes in, and he leaves the door open, and the laundry room is like full of his dirty, sweaty Austin, Texas clothes. And it's like on the way to our bedroom, and I'm a woman and I'm a Virgo and I like things neat, not in the like, super anal retentive way, but just, I don't want to look at his sweaty underwear every time I walk by. If I say, I need you to close the laundry room door, he just feels nagged. But if I say, I need you to close the laundry room door because it brings me so much peace when I walk by and the door's closed. When I see it open, I feel anxiety. And so it just calms me down when I close the door. So we just close the door.
You said you were a Virgo. What date?
9/9.
Oh, okay. So it's funny because my girlfriend, she was born, she's September 5th. And then my aunt is the 13th, and my mom is the 18th. And then my Jenny's mom is now coming up, I think, on the 23rd or 24th. So I'm like,
You're surrounded by Virgo women.
Oh yeah. And it's funny because you mentioned that. I was like, Jenny's always like, babe, please, when you get out of the shower, come on, you close that, or turn the, what's it called? So that way the humidity can go away. Turn that on, please. Yeah, I always, so it's funny when you mentioned, I went back and I was like, wait, hold up. I was like, hold up.
Happy belated birthday, by the way.
Yeah, happy belated birthday.
Thank you very much. But that, those three things can really, really make a difference. And they're not hard. The harder part is realizing why we're triggered and doing the inner work. But relationships are really only hard when we're not doing our own work. Truly, really. Or when you're doing your work and your partner isn't. That's really hard too. But when two people are doing their own work, mainly their inner child work, and they're really being a good inner parent to themselves, and they're monitoring that inner critic, and they're just aware of their triggers and on this path of personal development and growth, relationships really don't have to be that hard. They really don't.
It's crazy because, it's one of those things where sometimes it's like, some of these things sound so simple, yet they're so hard.
Yeah.
You know, and I think
Like being present.
yeah, that's exactly.
Yeah.
And it's like hearing what you're saying, and just, you know, through some of my experiences going back, as I'm thinking now, it's just like it's all about communication. It's all about understanding as well. And one of the things you brought up that stuck out to me, that I wanted to ask you about, you said something in there about knowing when to take a break. When do you know when you need to take a break, and what is taking a break? Because I know sometimes taking a break means certain things to some people, where they're like, oh, well, I'm gonna go date other people, or you know, is a break like, are we gonna be on and off like this, always on a break? Because you know, you hear people go on a break, then they're on a break again after, and then they're a break again. So how does that work, and how do you know when to make fully good use of that break in a way where it's like, okay, we know what we need to work on during this break, so that way it works?
Well, it's kind of like there's two ways to take a vacation. You take a vacation because you're running from your life and you just want to escape and drink and maybe sleep with a random stranger and just like get away from it all. Or you take a vacation to be intentional, go on a healing retreat, and really relax and rejuvenate, so that when you come back from it, you're fresh, right? Same way with taking a break. There's two ways to take a break: from frustration and from, we can't do this anymore and I'm sick of you and I just want to get away. And it's more that like first kind of vacation of just let me just get away from this all. And it's not very intentional. It more comes from a reactivity place. It more comes from, I don't know what else to do, I just want to get away from you.
Josh, do you need a break from me, or okay?
No, I think we're all right for now.
Okay.
I got my birthday
just
trip
wanna make
coming
sure.
up, so if I need one, I can escape.
Well, if you do, you can take an intentional break, which is a much better kind of break to do, which is, all right, so we're going to take a break. This is what it's going to look like. And the intention of the break is for both of us, we're triggering each other. So the intention of the break is for both of us to work on our stuff, so that when we come back together, we aren't, just triggering each other so much. So there's agreements in the break in terms of how long the break's going to be. Not seeing other people. I don't think you can work on your relationship at a break and see other people. I agree. It's a break up if you're doing that. Because if anyone in a relationship is feeling, I really want to see other people, and if I saw other people that would fix my problem in the relationship, that's still an inside thing, because that's a part of you that's looking for validation, looking for something from somebody else. It's like, oh, if I just kiss or sleep with this other person, then like everything. All
my problems are going to go away. Not a chance.
Good luck. You just have another person in your energy field that you've got to deal with. So it's intentional about the length of time, the agreements around not seeing other people, and also what your plan is in terms of, are you going to work with a counselor? What are you going to do in that break? And are you going to communicate in the break too? I generally advise, at least for the first 2 weeks of an intentional break, no communication. So you can just like work on, your own stuff. But they can be, I have a couple that just did an intentional break. They've been married for a very long time. And I'm always a little leery of suggesting that, because often these breaks can lead to a breakup. I know for me, when my ex-husband and I separated, it led to a divorce. But the difference was, it wasn't very intentional. We just were like, we need a break from each other. And I don't think he was doing a lot of deep work in that time. So it was more like a break on the way to a breakup than a break on the way to a breakthrough, which is very different. So these clients, they took an intentional break. It was mapped out. I was talking to both of them separately, so they knew they had someone that was making sure the other person was, okay. And they really worked on their own inner stuff. They knew what their own issues were that kept bumping up against each other. And they have come back together and are really doing well and are feeling more connected and are appreciating each other more. So it can be very useful, but it needs to be done very intentionally, not the like party vacation way, but the more like I'm going on a retreat kind of way.
It's like I say, anything in life, if you're not doing it intentionally, then it's not going to count.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think the whole, ability to have a really healthy relationship really comes down to the awareness that you have, awareness of your own internal emotions, as well as like how you're making someone else feel, or even how they're feeling in general. Right. Like
totally.
Just kind of using myself as an example again, I told you I was like the fixer person. So every time my ex-wife would try to, you know, even just vent to me, first thing I went to was like, okay, how am I going to solve this problem for her? Like, I got to just solve this problem. I got to move forward. When 95% of the time she just wanted to vent and get over it. And it would cause like a bigger fight than what probably would have happened if we did have a fight, which probably wouldn't have even happened. Right. Exactly. Just because I was trying to, you know, figure out all these things, when she's just like, listen, I got it. I just want to tell you that, you know, this shitty thing happened today.
Yep. It's, you know, it's again, back to relationships are only hard when we aren't working on ourselves and we're coming from wounding versus like true intentionality and true love. And we also desperately want to be loved. We want to be seen. And that's a human need, to be loved and seen. There's nothing wrong with that. And when relationships, especially intimate relationships, come into our life, it's like we want it, but we don't. So it's just we're protecting our heart because we've all been really hurt in the past. So it's risky. It's risky to love. It's risky to be intimate, like truly intimate with someone. I'm amazed at how many people will take their clothes off and have sex and be intimate that way, but won't be intimate in terms of like their deepest desires and deepest fears and deepest longings and things like that. I think we've really kind of gotten intimacy backwards in a lot of ways, and we need to.
Sorry about that. I was going to say, I love that you brought that up, because actually we were in a podcast the other day with one of our guests, CJ, and he brought up something with what he shared with his wife, and he was saying, what was it that, you know, they had first a level of intimacy of just really diving in to get to know each other.
Oh yeah, they didn't have sex until they got married.
Yeah, and he was saying that it just really, when he had his past experience with other relationships, he said that it really allowed for a different understanding of each other and really knowing who that person was before even getting physical at all, and having that, you know, deeper sexual desire. And he was saying that it was an amazing experience. So that literally, when you said that, that clicked for me in my head. And what's your takes on that? Actually, what's your takes on that, on that?
I think that sex can really confuse us.
Definitely.
In so many ways, because there's a hormonal dump that happens when we're physically intimate with someone. And, you know, my husband and I, so we met when I was in San Diego and he was in Australia, and he was in Perth, Australia, like way Western Australia. So we literally were on opposite sides of the world. And we had a 3-month relationship just through WhatsApp and video.
Wow.
And we got to know each other so well. Every day we'd ask 5 questions. Like I'd write the questions, he'd answer the questions, then I answer my own questions, and then we'd flip. And nothing was off limits in these questions. We really went deep, and I didn't even know what he smelled like. Like I had I could see him, but I had no physical anything. And it provided such clarity. Like I was really able to see him because I wasn't worried about, oh God, like it's the 3rd date. Is he going to expect sex? And I don't know. And like, cause that's a lot of times what women go through. And then a man kind of goes through, oh, now it's time to perform. And I've got to think about that. And it just adds a layer to it that really can confuse us in so many ways. And I find in my own life, and again, working with so many people, when you're really at the point, because there's sometimes in life where we just want to sleep with a lot of people. Like that's just like what we're up to. And it's, you know, it's maybe a rite of passage for some of us that we go through. But there's other times in our life when we're really looking for a relationship. And I think if you're in the stage of your life, at the point in your life where you're really looking for a relationship and a side-by-side partnership, a true, this is it kind of growth relationship, then I think holding off on the physical and especially on sex is a really great idea, because you can just see with much more clarity. You really know how you're feeling about someone beyond just the physical. And it provides, I think, such a healthier buildup to sex, and you appreciate it so much more. And to me, especially when you're looking for a relationship, sex is so much better when there's emotional intimacy. It's so much better because you don't feel as awkward. You can speak your needs. When you're emotionally intimate with someone, it's so much easier to be physically intimate with someone. You don't need alcohol. You don't need lights down. You don't need to perform in a certain way. You can just be yourself. And That's really liberating.
You heard that, guys? You heard that?
Yeah, seriously.
So what would you say? Obviously, I don't want to say, oh, there's a timetable. But would you say there's a timetable? How do you know when's a good time to have that conversation with your partner and understanding like both of you are on the same page about maybe waiting and getting to know each other, more? And how does that look like? Is there a different timetable for everybody? Is there like a range? Like, how does that work?
I think it's such a personal thing. I'll just answer personally. Like for me, I knew I was ready to have sex with Steph, my now husband, because I felt so like I didn't feel like I was holding back. I felt like I felt completely safe with him. I felt completely emotionally naked. I didn't feel, he was the first man I really didn't feel like I was putting on any masks on. Like I wasn't worried about what he was thinking or saying I like something when I really didn't, or just any of those things that we do to kind of contort and chameleonize ourselves into what we think someone needs to be. And there was just such, I already was falling in love with him. So there was just such this heart connection. And I think that's a good indicator when you really feel that heart connection, like your heart is open and you feel safe with someone and you really feel like someone is cherishing your heart, then that's often the time to take it to that physical level, because it's just such a beautiful thing when that emotional intimacy is there.
Now, what do you think, causes, or what are some causes of this stigma towards, over sexualization or having sex quickly, right? Because we live in Miami, very, very sexual city, very, nightlife, a lot of people, drinking and, doing extracurriculars, even in my own friend group, like when I separated from my wife, or, when one of our friends would break up with their girlfriend, like, oh, you got to go hook up with a girl. You got to go do this.
Right.
Like, well, and even if you're talking to a girl, they're like, oh, you're going to bring her home. Like, well, I don't know. Like, I'm just talking to her, I met her 5 minutes ago. Like, what do you think are some causes of that? And how do we recognize those things when they do appear?
I think the cause is because we as a culture, species, whatever you want to say, are very bad with discomfort. We do not like pain. We do not like emotional discomfort. It's why obesity and addiction and all of the porn and all of those things are a problem. We want the shortcut. We don't want the longer route of let me sit with my issues, explore my childhood wounds, look at my relationship with a higher power, and like deal with my shadow. Like, no, let me go have sex with somebody else or eat a cheeseburger. Like, that's way easier. So that's why. It's because we don't like sitting in the discomfort, and because it isn't taught, we don't know how. Imagine if like emotional processing and understanding ourselves were taught in school. I took a year of Texas history in school, like a year, and it's interesting that we took a year of Texas history and a year of world history. Like, I think world history deserved at least 4 to 5 years. Anyway, our systems aren't set up to really teach us how to deal with the discomfort. So we want the quick fix. We want the Band-Aid. We want the thing that will make us feel better in that moment. And again, not to generalize with sexes, but for a man, it's that validation. It's the conquest. It's that. And for the woman, it's the, I'm chosen. Like I'm in that moment. I'm his everything, And so it's that feeling of accomplishment and feeling special that often is the Band-Aid or the drug that we go to temporarily try to fix that discomfort. So the more we can sit in that discomfort and be with it and have the right tools to deal with it, the less we need those external things, sex, alcohol, porn, workaholic, whatever it may be, any of the isms or the addictions, to numb and distract ourselves.
I think it's really powerful what you said, just basing off the fact of uncomfortability, but just, how you can see it present yourself in so many ways in different people's areas, and why they settle for the comfortability and where it always stems from somewhere. So it's like, it doesn't only have to be in relationship sex. It could be in business and other things in other areas of your own personal life, but it always comes from somewhere. What are your biggest suggestions and tools to people to work on that, on being able to get out of that get out of that comfortability and enter the uncomfortable realm to be able to work on yourself, to be able to allow yourself to grow, succeed in whatever area
Right.
it is, whether it's relationship, business, health. What are your biggest go-to factors and tools to be able to help somebody who's going through that right now in any of those areas?
Well, I swear this year has been a triggering event for so many people because so this is a really good time. And this is what I've been saying since March. I'm like, all right, everybody, we're being thrown into uncertainty. We're being thrown into chaos. We're being thrown into a lot of what I call expectation hangovers. So
I loved your book, by the way.
What?
I love that book, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. You're going to be triggered, like be prepared for it. And I don't think, it's going to get easier for a while now. We're almost at the end of the year. So this is the time to really do that. And it can look different for everybody. For some people, it's getting a therapist or coach, getting a guide, because it can feel so overwhelming that you don't know where to begin. And so it's that. For other people, it's getting on Amazon or Google or whatever, typing in some of your problems and looking or whatever you're struggling with and going, you know what, that book really resonates with you. And that's a step. You just like read a book or you listen to a podcast, because that's one of the first steps in change is awareness. So it kind of depends on where someone is at. If someone is just waking up to the fact of, oh my gosh, like I'm not a victim of my circumstances. I'm actually a co-creator of my life. Only 3 to 5% of my behavior is consciously driven. The other, say 95% is unconsciously driven, meaning all my like childhood issues and beliefs that were seeded long, long times ago are actually driving my behavior. That's sort of the wake up, right? When we realize, oh, wait a second, like I'm out in the matrix here. And so that might be the first, it might just be reading the books and listening to the podcast and getting that information to start lighting up different parts of your brain, because we often need that awareness before we do the deeper work to understand ourselves. To try to go right into our shadow without the awareness of just how life works, how psychology works, kind of how the universe works. You don't have to know all of it, but just some basics makes it easier to do the deeper work. So that would be the first two things, like maybe getting a guide or finding those resources that really help you start to have the awareness. And then the individual tools, I'm a big fan of inner child work. That's why Steph and I teach workshops on healing your inner child, because again, 17 years of doing this, when anybody comes to me with anything, pretty much it always traces back to childhood. 99% of the time. And then eventually it doesn't. And it's more about just shifting little beliefs here or there. It's not like we're processing our childhood for the rest of our life. I don't want to give that impression. But that's usually where it begins. So doing that kind of inner child work, even something simple as having a picture of yourself anywhere from like 2 to 10 years old and looking at it every day and connecting with that little one inside and just allowing yourself to feel self-compassion. Self-compassion is a massive part of healing, because most of us have a really nasty, really loud inner critic in our head that we think is actually our internal voice. We've gotten so used to it that we think this part of us that's always driving us and beating us up and telling us what we could have done better, we think that that's us, but it's not. And so being able to kind of calm that inner critic down and connect to yourself with compassion. And there's something about looking at a picture of ourselves in childhood that opens our heart and starts to connect us more with like the deeper sensitivity, the deeper parts of ourselves. I'm a really big fan of what I call release writing, which is basically free-form journaling. It's not the kind of journaling when it's like, today I was on a podcast and it's more, I'm angry because, I'm sad because, and writing so fast that your handwriting is a mess, you can't read it, and burning it or ripping it up when you're done, as a way to just get things out of your head, get things out of your mind, handwrite, not type, so you start to access more the emotional subconscious center of your brain. Those are all kind of good ways to get the wheels turning. But I really always encourage, and it's not because this is my industry, it's because I'm a human who's had my own experience. I don't think it's something we can do alone. I think that guides and one-on-one work is important at some phase in our journey. That's why we live in an interdependent world. And I want everyone to at least have some kind of access to some kind of professional who can be that guide and help along the way, because I do think that's a pivotal part of anyone's journey.
How would you or what recommendations would you give to people when they are seeking out a coach, right? Like,
Mhm.
when do they know that they're ready for, a type of coach of coaching like you do, or,
Mhm.
what other avenues are there for them to be able to find coaches for other aspects of, relationships or inner work?
Yep. Yep. So I love, and I know you've heard it a million times, when the student is ready, the teacher appears.
Mm.
And I truly believe that. It's amazing how when we set an intention and we open things up in our life, the right person, medicine, podcast, book, it comes along, and we're really intentional and we're really like, okay, I'm a yes to this. So that's the first thing. Really set that intention. Set that intention, like I'm ready for the person, the guide, the mentor that can help me at this stage I'm at, right? Because oftentimes we'll think, well, I really want someone to help me with my career. And so you start looking for a career coach because that's the area in your life where you feel you want the most change, where you feel the most frustrated. But the career coach might not be the best fit. The reason why you may not be successful in your career is because you felt like your father was never proud of you. And so you have really low self-worth, constantly chasing the approval of a ghost, basically. And you need to deal with that. So it doesn't matter how much coaching a career coach gives you about, like, this is what to do with your funnel, and this is what to do with your emails, and this is what to do with your brand. If you haven't dealt with those self-worth issues, like, good luck getting the career going. So really setting that intention to help me to not be super specific in your intention, but just to say, I'm really ready for the person that's most equipped to help me with where I am right now in my life and where I need to go. And then it's asking around. Like again, simple, yet asking people in your life. I think a lot of times we're ashamed to say that we need help. I think this is especially true for males. And to do our best to get over that, and to know that, like, our future depends on it, and to ask, hey, this is what I'm looking for. Put it out there. And one thing that's, I think, really important about hiring a coach or a therapist or guide or whatever is you really want to make sure they're living the life that you really want to live. So, for example, when I was single and I hired a dating coach, I really made sure that that person was in the kind of relationship that I wanted to be in. Like, I didn't ever hire single dating coaches or dating coaches that weren't in the kind of relationship that I really wanted to be in. So are they walking their talk? Nobody needs to walk on water, but really, are they walking their talk? And it's okay to try people out, just like dating, like if you go and you don't have a good feel and there's not that rapport and you don't really feel seen and understood, then try somebody else. And often it is a process of elimination. But I have found over and over again, like, even with clients that come to me on a retreat or a workshop or one-on-one, the ways that I've heard they found me have been it's been all over the map, because it's like they were ready. Somehow I popped into their podcast or a book or a friend talked about it or whatever, and boom, there's the alignment. So I do believe it's kind of magic like that sometimes.
How do you, just to kind of flip it around, how do you as the coach get the client or get someone who you're working with to understand that maybe where they think they are in terms of being ready is not actually where they are, right? Because we as, as trainers find the same problem sometimes. People are like, okay, I'm ready to lose 30 pounds and work out 5 days a week. It's like, dude, you don't even drink water.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. We got to start there and get some small wins, and then we'll build up to you being like a CrossFit athlete if that's what you want, but we got to start with the water first.
Not always the all-in is the best way.
Right.
So.
How do you get people to understand that maybe they need to, like, back it down a little bit, start with smaller wins and move from there?
With massive, massive compassion.
Mm-hmm.
Massive compassion, because I know that their big goals are coming from trying to compensate for lots of insecurity and lots of not enoughness. So I just, lots of compassion and lots of validation and lots of like, I see that, we're going to get there. And almost like not even sort of going down that road, but just bringing it into what's happening in your life right now. And eventually, like, they realize it. And that's the beautiful thing about coaching, is when you can get the client to see what you see just through asking questions and holding space for them. So in that example, of like, they're not even drinking water. It's like asking enough questions where they back it down enough to go, oh, wow, like I'm really not taking care of myself on a daily basis. And they don't need to have the understanding of, well, then I can't bench press that amount. They don't need to link those two, but at least it gets them down to their own realization. And that's one thing that like the people that trained me I've had some incredible teachers really, really early on in my 20s when I started coaching, ingrained in me. This is not about you, Christine, because my ego would get really invested in wanting to make sure my clients had a good result, had a good session, had their ahas, all those kinds of things. And like my first person that coached me and trained me, Mona, really pulled my ego out and was like, this is so not about you. It's not about you getting results for people at all. It's about you really holding space for them, asking them questions, shining a light on some things that they can't see, but also like providing a safe space where they can eventually get to their own answers. And so, there'd be times when I didn't think I had a great session or even a great, journey with a client, because according to my head, I wanted them to be, here. But they're like, oh my gosh, that was great. That was exactly what I needed. And so I that's one thing as a coach, I try to keep what I see and my ego and what I want for them totally out of the equation as much as I possibly can.
I think that was truly awesome, because I know a lot of coaches listening will definitely be able to use that. And I think vice versa too, for those clients who want to work with coaches, they can better understand how to align themselves with the proper coaches. I want to ask you, because I know we're approaching that hour marker, and I know we've been chatting up the storm, which has been amazing, and I know you got to get to somewhere important. But I wanted to ask you real quick, what is the biggest thing you would love to see more coaches do with their clients?
Well, I'm going to add a question and then answer that. So I'd love to see more coaches have more training.
Agreed.
Honestly.
Agreed.
Love that.
And I'm coming out with a training program in coordination with two of my friends and my husband, because we just see the lack of like really deep training, especially on the emotional, psychological level.
Which is everything.
Yeah.
Which is
really everything.
What's the name of your program?
We haven't named it yet, but it's coming out.
Okay.
Yeah, it's coming out 2021. You can go to christinehassler.com/coach training to get on the wait list.
We'll definitely have you back on. We'll have you back on so you can push it out and we get to help some people.
Yeah, it's gonna be amazing. But the reason for that is I feel like too many coaches are getting triggered in their own sessions because they haven't dealt with their unprocessed issues. And that ends up unconsciously getting projected on their clients, which is not good for either person. And again, you don't have to be walking on water, have all your issues healed by the time you coach, but you do need two things: a lot of training and a lot of your own work. I have had a coach since I was 22. I've always will have a coach. I have more than one. I'm always investing in myself. I always make sure I have people that are, supporting me and calling me forward. Otherwise, I'm out of integrity as a coach. And I always making sure I'm doing my deep work, like really looking for everything I possibly can so that I can be really present and clear for my clients. Mm-hmm. So that's the first thing. Like, I really think that coaches need more training and more of their own embodiment. And now I've forgotten the second question. What was the question you originally asked me?
It was asking, love that, by the way. It was basically asking you, it was about what did you feel you wanted to see more coaches doing, or what did you feel they needed, what area did you feel that they should be paying attention to?
Yeah, that one definitely. And then kind of piggybacking on my last question, don't underestimate the power of what holding a loving, compassionate, safe container can do. Don't get so into the results and the plan and the homework and the accountability, because I think that's a lot of times what we think a coach is. But back to, we're evolving marriage and what that means. We need to evolve what coaching means too. And I think that there's so much emphasis on the goal line of coaching and not enough on the soul line. Because, you can help people achieve their goals, but are you really helping them really ascend their soul? Like, are you helping them really evolve? And are you helping them go deep enough to really know if what they even want is what they even want? So just really holding that, safe, because for so many of my clients, I'm holding that safe parental role that they never have. Again, I'm not their parent, but that you're safe. I got you. I see you. All of you is welcome. All of your expression is welcome. That's profoundly healing for people. And I think sometimes coaches get too obsessed with the tools and the achievements and the like, this process, and I'm going to NLP you this, and we're going to manifest this, and Abraham Hicks this. And it's like, just shut up and be loving for a minute.
Shut your mouth, guys. Shut it.
No, it really is true though, because, you know, at least with my own clients, and I know that this holds true for Mendez as well, is like the people that we allow to just express themselves fully with no judgment at all tend to be the ones that stay with us the longest and see the most results, right? Like the people that I allow just to be themselves and let their freak flag fly as they may, right? Good for them. They know that I'm, you know, just as crazy as they may be at times. So, and they allow me to express my viewpoints as well. They really turned into like family, right? Because you get to know so much about them more than, in our case, just the workout, or in your case, like just the trauma, just the experiences that shaped who they were.
Yeah, exactly.
And I really love how you kept bringing up, you know, like, you know, coaches need coaches. You need help. You know, I'm a huge advocate of that. And it's just like myself, you know, I have my coaches, you know, I surround myself with people like Josh, you know, so we can keep learning off each other. And that's another thing I would say. I would love to see more coaches also allow themselves to be coached, you know, especially and I'm not saying, you know, myself, like go years back, you know, as a guy, it was like, well, you know, you know, I don't need that. And you see that even going back to my, you know, my parenthood, you know, and my childhood with my dad, hearing certain things he would say, and my grandfather's in that, no, but you know, we're the man, and you know, and it's just like, you realize it's like, no guys, like that's not the way, that it has nothing to do with being a man, you know, it just has to allow yourself to grow, you know. So I really appreciate that. I really appreciate that. Just want to say thank you so much. I know both me and Josh are truly, you know, super happy to have had you on.
Yeah, I've been a big fan of yours for a long time now.
He was like, dude, he's like, you don't understand. And I was like, I can obviously see why. You know, you're truly amazing at everything you do, and we'll continue to be a follower and somebody who's going to definitely recommend you to a lot of individuals out there. With that being said, I want to allow you to be able to share, you know, any information where people can find you. I know you talked about your new project coming on, if you want to mention that again, or any other new projects in the future as well.
Oh, thank you. Well, thank you both. I love seeing men really stepping into the personal development. And I know that you're combining the physical with the personal development, which I think is so important for everybody, especially men, because I think the masculine, either men or the masculine energy in all of us, needs that physicality. Like we need to feel our physical strength. And I truly believe that often gives people more courage to deal with some of their emotional weakness. You know, when you have that physical strength, it's like, okay, I can do this. Yep. So I can, let me like look at the emotional now. So I just love what both of you are up to and have lots of respect for you both. So thank you for having me.
Of course.
You can find me on Instagram. That's my favorite social media. Head over to the Over It and On With It podcast, or just search my name.
Amazing podcast.
Thank you. It's unscripted, unedited, unproduced coaching sessions with people. So I don't know anything about them. We just get on, we record, and I break it down. So I, you know, talk about what I did. A lot of coaches listen to it because they learn, you know, quite a bit from it. And if you go to christinehassler.com, just sign up for my coaching assessment, and that's when you can learn about all the things that are coming up.
You guys already heard.
Yeah. Thank you again. We really appreciate it.
I want to ask you one quick question.
Yeah, of course.
Biggest piece of advice you can leave off to all our listeners today in one sentence.
In just one sentence, oh my gosh, I would say, know that voice that beats you up and is hard on you is not you. And you can turn down the volume of that voice and turn up the volume of the voice that truly is you, which tells you you're worthy, you're enough, you're doing fine, everything's going to be okay, and you're loved.
Guys, you already heard it. Much love.
Awesome. Thank you again, Christine. Till next time, guys.